Pam Bondi didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She didn't even hesitate. She looked straight into the camera and insisted there was nothing in the Epstein files. But the moment she said it, something was off. Too clean. Too fast. Too rehearsed. And that's exactly where the cracks in this entire cover-up begin. Because within hours, whispers started spreading. Not from fringe accounts, but from reporters, staffers, and people who've been tracking this case for years, claiming those files weren't empty at all. They were buried, soft-locked.
Immigrants from court proceedings, nonviolent, non-criminal immigrants pursuing legal pathways to immigrate to this country, and then illegally detaining them in horrific conditions, and even possibly deporting them despite the fact that they are here legally. You would think the committee, with jurisdiction over the Department of Homeland Security, would want to conduct oversight over the department's refusal to allow members of Congress to observe the conditions of DHS detention facilities. In fact, there is a specific statute that authorizes both Republicans and Democrats to conduct oversight over facilities that house or detain immigrants. But no, the department refuses. So we're here in the Homeland Security Committee, and I'm sure the Republican majority does not like it when this administration undermines its own authority, its own statutory authority, to conduct oversight. But no, instead of all of that, we are here talking yet again about Joe Biden. Newsflash, Joe Biden is not the president. He hasn't been the president for 7 months. So if we are going to conduct oversight here, why are we doing it about the Biden administration when this administration is literally detaining lawful permanent residents and even some U.S. citizens? And it gets worse. It's not just those masked ICE agents. There are many FBI agents who are being called away from their duties to investigate terrorism, violent gangs, child trafficking, and other crimes in order to help ICE arrest and detain immigrants with legal asylum claims, nonviolent. That makes our homeland less safe, not more safe. So we should hear from FBI Director Kash Patel about how many of his criminal investigators are being taken away from their criminal investigatory jobs, keeping Americans safe in order to help round up non-criminal immigrants trying to immigrate the right way. Some of these detainees are being held in Bureau of Prisons detention centers that are unfit for convicted criminals to stay in. We should hear from Pam Bondi about how much of the department's resources are being used to detain these nonviolent, non-criminal immigration detainees. And while they're here, we can ask them about a very pressing question. What's going on with the Epstein files? Donald Trump promised to release them. Pam Bondi said she had the files on her desk and that she was going to release them in the name of transparency. Kash Patel has spent years railing against the FBI to release the files. Many of my Republican colleagues were banging on the table to release the Epstein files. But now, all of a sudden, after a months-long review, Bondi and Patel say nothing to see here, no evidence that any American would want to see about accomplices, co-conspirators, or other people involved. Yesterday, the Republicans voted against releasing the files. So what's changed? Well, we all know Donald Trump has had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He flew on his plane, he hung out at parties, spoke highly of him. And now there are many people saying that Donald Trump is included in the Epstein files. In fact, there are reporters who say that there are videos of him with topless women. Elon Musk even confirmed that Trump is blocking the release of these files because he's in them. Pam Bondi says there's nothing there, but Donald Trump even acknowledges that there is evidence there. It's just not credible. It's made up. This is a Truth Social post from 9:43 this morning. It is an admission that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. And the American people deserve to
Gentleman,
know
time has
whether he is or
expired.
not.
Mr. Garbarino
Mr.
is
Chairman, I
recognized
would,
for 5
pursuant to
minutes for
Clause
questioning.
2K6 of Rule
Gentleman is
11,
not recognized. Your time has expired.
I have a motion.
Mr. Garbarino
Chairman.
is recognized for questioning.
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman has a motion.
Pursuant to Clause 2K6 of Rule 11, I move that the committee subpoena Pam Bondi, Attorney General of the United States, and Pat Patel, the Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Mr. Chairman, motion to table.
Gentleman has a motion.
Motion to table.
Motion to table is privileged and non-debatable.
Hidden in a place where the public could never touch them. And for the first time, members of Congress started to suspect that someone powerful, someone connected, was terrified of what might come out. That's the moment everything snapped. Representative Dan Goldman walked into that Homeland Security hearing with a stack of subpoenas and the quiet confidence of someone who had finally run out of patience. He didn't show up to debate or tiptoe around anyone's ego. He came to ask one question that sent the entire room into a panic. What happened to the Epstein files? And the second he said it, the air shifted. Chairs tightened. Staffers leaned forward. Republicans who had spent years demanding transparency suddenly had nothing to say. Not a word. Silence, thick, uneasy, and calculated. But this wasn't just about files, and Goldman made that clear from the beginning. He pointed directly at the committee and said the thing nobody else had the nerve to say. While the country is dealing with real crises, while detention centers are breaking federal law by blocking oversight, while masked agents are pulling nonviolent immigrants out of courtrooms like something out of a dystopian novel, the committee keeps obsessing over an administration that hasn't existed in months. A convenient distraction. A shiny object. A way to avoid the one investigation they don't want touching their doorstep. And here's where the story takes a turn. Because this isn't just about a sealed binder or redacted documents. It's about a pattern. A pattern that ties together secrecy, political pressure, and a sudden unexplainable shift in behavior from people who used to scream for transparency. For years, members of the majority demanded the Epstein files be released. They campaigned on it. They promised it would expose the powerful. They accused the last administration of hiding everything. But the second this new review wrapped up, after months of internal back and forth, those same members voted against releasing the files. Something changed. And whatever it wasn't small. Pam Bondi once proudly declared that the files were right there on her desk. She said she'd release them for the sake of transparency, accountability, and justice. She looked confident, untouchable. But then silence. No press conference. No update. No explanation. Just a sudden pivot into the shadows, as if someone had flipped a switch and told her, "That's enough. We're done here." And the timing of it all? Far too perfect to be coincidence, because here's what the public didn't miss. A post early morning, where a certain former president admitted in plain language that he appears in those files. Not in criminal allegations, not in charges, but in references. Mentions. Statements he calls not credible. Claims he dismisses as made up. But still, he admitted he's in them. And that single moment, that single acknowledgement, sparked a firestorm that hasn't slowed down since. People online began posting screenshots. Journalists started hinting that the footage described in the documents, footage involving topless women, might involve individuals tied to him. And while none of that is verified, none of it proven, one thing is absolutely clear. The speculation isn't coming out of thin air. There are reporters saying they've heard descriptions. There are sources claiming pressure behind the scenes. And then there was the unexpected twist, Elon Musk himself hinting online that the former president is blocking the release of these files because he's in them. Again, speculation, but speculation with weight behind it. Enough weight to make the silence suddenly make sense, so Dan Goldman put it on the table. If there's truly nothing there, then why the sudden shutdown? Why the reversal? Why did a party that spent years demanding these documents suddenly vote to keep them hidden? Who is being protected? And why now? This is where the conversation circles back to the one thing nobody in that hearing wanted to discuss. The documented history between the former president and Epstein himself. No accusations. No conclusions. Just public facts. They partied together. They flew together. They appeared in old video footage laughing, talking, looking like two men who understood exactly the world they were navigating. They shared a social circle. They attended the same events. And while none of that automatically implies wrongdoing, the idea that not a single relevant mention exists in the files feels unlikely. And that's not conspiracy, it's common sense. Goldman connected the dots. When people in power hide documents, when committees ignore oversight, when subpoenas go unanswered, when people who once demanded transparency suddenly demand secrecy, there's always a reason. And the reason is almost never nothing to see here. The hearing grew tense. Members squirmed, dodged, tried to interrupt him, tried to pretend the question didn't matter. They wanted to switch topics, pivot to old political fights, drag the discussion back to safe territory. But Goldman didn't back off. He leaned in. Harder. He cited the law. He cited committee authority. And then he did something nobody expected. He invoked Rule 11. A procedural hammer. A step that bypasses permission and forces action. A move that said, enough. You're going to answer this. The room froze. Nobody was expecting someone to actually enforce oversight. Nobody thought anyone would challenge the quiet agreement to bury this issue. But Goldman didn't walk in to play politics. He walked in because the American people deserve answers. And he made it clear that ignoring subpoenas wasn't an option anymore. While this was happening, another crisis was unfolding in the same breath. DHS detention centers refusing congressional oversight. Facilities holding immigrants, many with no criminal background, were operating in violation of federal law. Members of Congress were blocked from entering. Agents, masked unidentified, were pulling people from courtrooms. Not fugitives. Not violent offenders. People following legal immigration pathways. Families. Workers. Asylum seekers. The committee could have spent the hearing on this very real, very urgent issue. But instead, they fixated on old headlines and political theater. Goldman called them out. Harshly. Because when the committee ignores the law to chase political ghosts, and simultaneously ignores abuses happening right now, something is deeply broken. It isn't oversight. It's avoidance, strategic, intentional, calculated avoidance. And the Epstein files are part of that avoidance. The same people who refused to visit those detention centers suddenly refused to release documents tied to one of the darkest scandals in modern American history. Patterns don't lie. So Goldman pressed the point over and over. Why did the committee stop demanding the files? Why was the review conducted behind closed doors? Why did Bondi go silent? Why did supportive members suddenly refuse transparency? What changed after the internal review? And why did the former president himself suddenly offer a preemptive defense? Speculation online continues to swirl. Some say political pressure. Some say fear of backlash. Some say the files contain names from across the political spectrum, and neither side wants to detonate that bomb. Others believe the documents could expose wealthy donors, allies, powerful figures whose names have never been publicly tied to Epstein before. But here's the truth everyone agrees on: the files exist. Someone reviewed them. And someone made the decision not to release them. Goldman's subpoena wasn't just paperwork. It was a challenge. A warning. A message to every official who thought they could quietly let this whole thing fade away. He made it clear that the truth won't stay buried. Not this time. Not with this amount of public pressure. Not when members of Congress are now holding legal authority over the people who claimed nothing to see here. And make no mistake, the stakes are massive if those files reveal even one name the public wasn't expecting. If they show communications, logs, references, travel entries. If they prove that certain powerful figures knew more than they admitted, everything changes. That's why this fight matters. That's why this confrontation was so explosive. And that's why silence from officials like Bondi raises more questions than it answers. The American people deserve transparency. They deserve honesty. And they deserve to know who is being protected behind the scenes. If you believe that no one should be shielded from accountability, if you believe these files should be released, if you believe the truth shouldn't be buried because it threatens the powerful, then make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because this story is far from over. And the moment those subpoenas hit, everything could break wide open.